Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, they're back. The back in this case is the Pennsylvania Legislature. Our Capitol insiders will, guess what, weigh in on the fall agenda, and then our popular financial literacy update, Pennsylvania government and politics, in depth and in detail, and it all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
All right, welcome back. As always, I want to thank viewers. WGAL, we're now on at 7:30. I know, good time just before the Sunday Today show. All right, joining me as often is the case is Gene Barr. He's a vice president with the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Do I got that right?
Business and Industry.
You know,
close.
All these chambers are like a little different.
We try to make it difficult on you.
I know, but it all means the same, right?
We're all comparable.
I got it. And Jim Redmond is senior vice president with the Hospital and Healthsystem Association of Pennsylvania. Did you get that right?
You did.
I'm then mutilate that. All right, guys. Capitol insiders, here we go. Jim Redmond, I want to start with you. Just when we thought the budget was done, it ain't. What does that mean for our viewers? Tell us.
Well, the budget was put together on the assumption that Congress would extend part of the Federal Stimulus Act that provided additional funds for Medicaid, about $850 million for Pennsylvania. That was scheduled to expire at the end of December of this year. And Congress didn't do that. However, since that time, Congress did extend the Federal Stimulus Act, didn't provide the $850 million, but approximately $680 million for Pennsylvania. But it left the governor and the legislature a need to kind of go back and relook at some things.
So they're a couple $100 million short, is that what you would think?
About $280 million.
You agree? Is that about it?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
So the governor proposed one on the assumption that they'll deal with the Marcellus Shale severance tax, about $70 million, and then about a 1.9% reduction or freeze on existing spending for all state agencies.
So he's ordered a general across-the-board cutback. Is that your understanding?
It is, yes, on everything across the board, and somewhat modest for some, but it comes on top of other cuts too.
Well, let's talk about this. Is this doable in your humble judgment?
Yeah, of course, it varies by agency, but as Jim said, there's 280 million short. There are a lot of legislators who simply said, great, there's the increase in basic ed that you got in the budget, and some people want to target that immediately.
Is it did I read where some Senate leaders have said, we'll cut the education budget?
For some, that's the easiest thing to do.
Governor did cut $50 million, or proposed to cut $50 million, but didn't cut all of the increase.
All right, you brought up Marcellus Shale. Is that, and you know, that's one of the things that the Republicans have agreed with the Democrats to take up, correct?
They've agreed to take it up,
but not to resolve it.
But not simply just, hey, let's put a tax in, because the industry said, look, we're willing to look at this situation, but there are things that we need to do in order to make sure that this particular industry can continue to grow. There are things relative to pooling and permitting and a whole bunch of different things. So if they talk about it comprehensively, we may get there, but we've only got a few days in the fall to do this.
9 days. Someone told me something like 9 days in joint session.
Senate's in for 10 days. Yeah. The House is in for 17 days.
A few more. Because they're coming in after November.
Right.
But not to get too much. Yeah, but the Senate is not coming in.
Correct. The House is.
So this is all going to get caught up in intra-chamber battling over session days and what they do, or no?
It has already gotten caught up.
It already has gotten caught up.
Well, keep in mind what the Senate has said. You know, in response to what reformers have said over the years, where they don't think we ought to have a sine-die session, that is a session after the November election when people who either have retired or were defeated vote. Senate said, fine, we'll go along with that. We're not going to do that.
I want to move on. Big question. Marcellus Shale resolution, likely or unlikely this fall?
Probably not, because there's too many things surrounding it.
Likely or not?
I'll give it a better chance than Gene.
Likely. So we got that's fine. We want some disagreement on it. I don't want you guys just to communicate. All right, let's talk about pension reform. Wow, I mean, and I have to fess up. I'm in the one of the former professor at Millersville University. All right, let's talk about this. I mean, some say it's a $50-some billion problems if they do a bill in the legislature. that they're talking about maybe getting it down to $29 billion. Are they going to do something about, well, first of all, is pension reform doable in 9, 10, you pick the number of days?
Well, the House passed a bill, and
Correct.
It's pending before the Senate. But at the moment, I don't see the appetite for them to deal with this, and I think they're going to wait until next year.
But it's a huge problem moving forward, right?
It's absolutely immense when you look at the potential impact on property taxes as we move forward, what gets hit at the school district level, at the municipal level, in addition to the state. It's huge.
Mm-hmm. And they're talking about extending the number of years that you have to work to retire, how many years you have to be in service before you get a...
That's right.
That's the bill that essentially passed the House,
right.
Correct?
That's correct.
All right. We're going to run to a break. Before I do, pension bill out in the House that would change some of the current pension system for new people. Let's get that straight.
Correct.
Likely or unlikely in the 9 or 7, between 9 and 17 days that they'll be in session?
More unlikely than likely.
I agree.
All right. Here we go. All right. This is our legislative update. We're getting a sense about what's going on. I want to ask about this distracted driving bill. It's there was a couple of accidents just recently, again, with people texting and on cell phones. The prospects for passage, our insiders will weigh in after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back. We're here with our Capitol Insiders, Jim Redmond and Gene Barr. We're talking about the fall legislative agenda. The legislature will be back in about a week. I know you thought they were. No, they weren't. Never mind. At any rate, let's talk about distracted driving. I think this is a Representative Josh Shapiro from Montgomery County. Do I have that right?
And Representative Joe Markosik.
And Markosik. So here's the deal. The differences between the House and the Senate on this has to do with the offenses for using a cell phone and texting. There's some other things in. What's that about?
The House version, which is the tougher version, would have it as a primary offense. So a law enforcement officer, if he saw you texting while driving, could pull you over.
Okay.
The Senate version essentially says that it's a secondary offense. In other words, if you were speeding and texting, they could pull you over.
Sort of like the seatbelt law, where
exactly,
if
like
they get you for speeding and have your seatbelt on. There's some other elements in it we don't have to get in, have to do with young drivers and who can be in the car with them. Is that controversial, Gene, do you think?
Probably somewhat. It all depends on who you're transporting. I mean, we've gone through this before. If you're of a certain age, can you have somebody in the car because there's a belief that talking in the car distracts? So we're going to continue to be dealing with those things.
And some parents may want to have more people in the car because of the pulling.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to soccer games, you're going to basketball or whatever.
That's right.
Now, and there's all this debate about the research, which side, who has the better argument. I mean, I've just recently, there were some accidents with people, texting and on cell phones. Passage, likely, unlikely? You go first.
Well, when the Senate modified the House version to reduce the offense, the House decided to non-concur, which sets up a joint conference committee, a smaller group of Senate and House leaders to work out the differences. To my knowledge, they have not even met. Okay.
All right, let's quickly turn to independent fiscal office. This is a proposal that comes out of the Senate. A Republican senator says, we all deal with the governor's numbers. We need our own fiscal office to determine how much we've spent, what the meaning of all these budget numbers are. Sort of based on the Congressional Budget Office. Am I right, Gene?
Yeah, it's pretty close to it. Yep.
Now, flesh out some details about that.
Well, there's a lot of folks in the Senate who really want to see this, who want to have a set of numbers that are set aside that people agree on, that aren't massaged by somebody else. Say, okay, great, that's what we can believe, and that you have an overinflated revenue or undercut expenses.
Right.
So there's a strong push over on a lot of members of the Senate that says we really want this.
Right. All right. Passage likely or unlikely?
Probably 50-50.
I don't think it'll pass.
Ever or just in the fall?
Just in the fall.
And you think maybe?
It's 50-50. There's a
But
strong
they're the two
feelings,
things,
but,
Marcellus Shale and this tax. Okay. Before I let you go, I want to ask you about adult basic. I know it's something that you were going to go.
Sure.
Explain that to me.
The adult basic program
is a health care program, very important.
Right, which provides health care coverage to working adults, approximately 40,000 Pennsylvanians. The primary funding source, which comes from the 4 Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, expires at the end of this year. And there have been efforts in the House primarily to force the Blues to do that. My understanding is that an agreement was worked out that they'll extend it for another 6 months and deal with it next year.
Next year. Now, this had a lot of people who are eligible. This is coverage. You're not Medicaid. You're beyond the income to get Medicaid, and it's a lot of working adults in this. Do I got that right?
Exactly.
And how many? But there was a list that you gave me a number one time, a huge number of people.
The insurance department reports, it's 300,000 on the waiting list.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that's not a small number of people. All right, what are you going to be working on? What's your big?
Well, transportation's there, and we've got all kinds of proposals swirling around that, trying to resolve this unemployment compensation issue, looking at the Marcellus, because we've got a lot of members, and we believe there's a real strong economy
big issues,
for that.
Right?
Huge issues for
Now, tell me
Pennsylvania.
this, before I let you go, do you think that there's a sense that they want to kick the can down the road and let the next governor and legislature deal with a lot of these big problems?
Well, I think that's probably right. On pensions, I think that's probably more likely than not. I think, people want to do that. On transportation, look, transportation, our organization actually supports a motor fuel tax increase, but they're not going to vote on that a month or two before the budget, and they're not going to do it in sine die.
Before the election?
Before the election. They're not going to do it in sine die. Senate's not coming back.
You agree?
Yeah, I agree.
So, who wants to be the next governor? You don't have to answer that. I mean, they're going to weigh in. All right, the popular financial literacy update is next. Stay with us. We'll see you back here in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. All right, financial literacy update. Joining me, as often is the case, is Bob Marquette. He's with the First Federal Credit Union, and Mike Wishnow. We know where he's with. He's with the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. All right, they're back. The legislature's back, and the kids come back. I wonder what that's all about, Michael. They all come back at the same time. I'll tell you, there have been some. Used to be, you'd go on campus, and I'd walk by a professor, right, and I'd say, all these vendors selling, buy a credit card, sign up rather for a credit card. That's not happening this year, is it? What's that about?
No more free beer mugs and Frisbees.
Go ahead, talk about it. One of you, who wants to talk about it?
The law's changed, and now if you're under 21, you have to have a cosigner, right, Bob?
That's correct.
How do they do that when you're on campus? Can you, fax it in?
You can always fax anything in, but we can facilitate anything today. But unless you have the demonstrated ability to make the payments on the credit card, if you're under 21, you need a cosigner.
So let me get this straight. So for most, I'm not sure, by the way, that a lot of college kids don't come already with at least one card. I don't know if you know anything. They'll arrive on campus, their parents have gotten them a credit card with some limit on it. But in the past, people would sign up, they'd get 3 and 4 credit cards, right, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. And it's prudent, frankly. I mean, we talk about credit cards somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but credit cards are a necessity for most people. And it's very prudent to have a young man or woman who are starting college to have a small credit card with a small balance that they can't get themselves in too much trouble with.
I got it.
That they get with mom and dad's permission and knowledge.
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about, Terry, is them getting into multiple credit cards without mom or dad knowing.
Yeah.
And eventually, mom and dad get stuck with the tab.
And that could happen before this legal change, right?
Could have.
Correct. Could have happened. That's right.
Correct.
All right. I want to. Boy, we got a lot to get through here. I want to get into paying for college and all that. But the other thing is, there's been all sorts of changes, literally, and you better read your credit card statement.
Absolutely.
Why should you, particularly now? I know you're going to tell me you're always supposed to read it, but why now is it ever more important?
Well, the rules have changed. A lot more information has to be conveyed on credit card statements to really try to educate the public. So pay attention to that. It'll tell you what kind of fees you're paying, what kind of interest rate you're paying.
And there are changes in that.
Absolutely. As we speak, there's changes coming down the pike.
Usually up.
Oh, yes.
So people need to pay a lot of attention to the interest rates and how much their payments are. If they're, I mean, it's complicated, but now more than ever, people need to, every letter they get from their credit card company, they need to read carefully.
Absolutely.
See, that's why we're doing this program, because it matters. All right, one of the things that we need to talk about is, you know, everybody's, one of the biggest concerns, going to school, paying for it, take out student loans. But one way to possibly finance that, Mike, is to borrow on your house. Now, typically, would that always be a great idea?
Well, there are a number of ways to finance college education. Bob, I know your members come to you and say, hey, what should I do?
Yeah, there's federal programs that now have to go through the U.S. Department of Education. All of your federal guaranteed and subsidized loan programs are now through the U.S.
That's correct. That's the change that took place with the health care. It was attached to the health care.
Absolutely. But the other way is private student loans are available to help finance education. Home equity loans are, to your point, are available. And again, is it always a good idea? Well, if you're intending to sell your home in the near future, it might not be the best idea. But if you're not, you might want to pull out some equity in a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit.
So in other words, you own a home. We're going to run to break here, but let me get this point. You own a home, you have some equity in it, you got kids that you want to send to college. You may want to borrow on the equity in the home. And the advantage, we'll talk about a potential disadvantage, the advantage would be, Michael, that you can refinance at a much lower interest rate, maybe?
Probably no maybe. I mean, you should be able to refinance at a much lower interest rate than you currently have, and certainly at a much lower interest rate than what the student lending market is at right now. Right, Bob?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have rates today. 15-year fixed-rate mortgage is around the high 3%, 3.875. 30-year mortgages.
I may call you, by the way.
Give us a call.
I may give you a call. That's a
30-year mortgage.
But if you don't have a lot of equity and you're concerned about the dropping value in your house, or you want to sell it, is that a great idea, one of you?
No, of course not.
Okay. See, what we're trying here is we get balance here. We always look at the pros and cons. All right, we're out. No, we're not done. We'll be back for the final segment. Stay with us. Financial Literacy Update continues after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Credit card.
Hi, welcome back to the program. All right, we're just chatting here about credit cards and students. You were making a point on the break, but we're back now. Go ahead.
Mike mentioned about getting a credit card and some of the advantages of getting a small credit balance, credit limit for your student. But one of the advantages to that is that student is building credit history, too, while they're using that visa during their college.
Boy, I'll tell you, that credit score is so valuable these days. I mean, when you're trying to borrow money, I mean, it affects the interest rate. And I think people are just literally now much more concerned about that credit score and understanding. I'll tell you what I want you to do next month. Well, you have credit next month or something. I want you to, can we do this and get into this again? The credit score business and how to understand it?
Absolutely.
I think that's be a great service to people. There's not enough that, and maybe some things have changed with it since we talked. I think we did that 6 months or a year ago. All right. I want to talk about private student loans. You know, the federal law has changed now. Where are people getting their money, and what does it mean? Can someone help us out? We got, you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands, a couple 100,000 people in the state of Pennsylvania going to college. Who wants to talk about that? You start.
Well, I'll start the process. It starts with the FAFSA, which is a federal form that every parent has to fill out to see whether your son or daughter is able to get grants, able to get loans, as Bob said, reduced rate loans that are subsidized by the government, or unsubsidized loans.
Okay.
And that's where you start. And you see what's available through the government.
So the higher income, usually you're not going to get
grants.
No grants, and maybe not subsidized. So you got grants, subsidized loans, and unsubsidized
loans.
Okay.
Okay. And then once you've looked at that, there typically is a gap between the government loans and the cost of tuition. And that's when it moves over to the private side, which is what Bob does.
So you may actually end up getting two loans. Is that your point? Would you get a subsidized loan, and then you'd have to come to a banker, you guys, some credit union, and say, okay, is that, do I got that all wrong?
You're absolutely right. It would be two loans.
Two loans. So do you think you're going to get more private lending given this situation, or less now because of the change in the federal law?
I think we'll get more.
Okay.
I think we'll get more. Again, it's that local presence. It's a local coming in, talk to someone, trying to understand what their options are. I think we'll get more.
Yeah. Looking ahead here, I mean, I noticed, you know, Pennsylvania, we're an importer of students, but most of the loans, the unsubsidized loans in our state, are coming from Pennsylvania residents. Is that right? Do people usually do this borrowing in their own, you know, lending in their own state? Is that?
Yes, I would say
you don't get a lot of.
No, as Bob said, it's usually local. I mean, if you're in Pennsylvania and you're going to a college in Boston, chances are you're going to go to your local Pennsylvania financial institution to get your loans. Correct?
So we got grants, we got subsidized, we got unsubsidized. Where do you get the unsubsidized loans? Am I right about this? Credit unions, banks, and is that it? Is that basically where 90%?
Well, there's two sets of unsubsidized. There's unsubsidized from the government, and then there's private. And the private loans, Bob, is where they would come to you, correct?
Yep, they come to credit unions or to banks that would offer those.
All right, look, a great update. We're going to get to this credit scores and all of that in an upcoming show. All right, thanks for watching this edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.